these different programs. So your uncle or your dad or somebody was working at Bright Sands. Let's get that piece of the puzzle. Was it your uncle that worked there?
I had died. Remember, it was hepatitis. I lost all the blood, and they brought a machine up from New Orleans to Monroe at St. Francis Hospital to clean the blood. They didn't know what else to do because I'd turned yellow and was dying. And their last-ditch effort was some doctor said, well, we could try this new machine, 57, 58 at time, to clean her blood. So they brought one up. But when they took my blood out of me and cleaned it, it made me pass. That's when I saw the angels. But
where
I'm going with this is I had to learn to walk and talk again. So I started knowing the golden angels. So they're like on the people. They were orbs, but they were golden orb people. I called them like my mother would make us sit down and watch Wizard of Oz every year.
And the same thing. We had Wizard of Oz, so that might be. Yeah, same thing. We had to watch. Well, we didn't have to, but it was like
we did.
They insisted. Yeah, every year.
My mother insisted that we sit down every year, Campbell's Soup, snowing or not outside, and watch Wizard of Oz with her. And so we did that. And it's a family tradition. And my mother and me and my sister, and then, so I thought this was normal too. Remember, I'd already seen Sputnik. I'd already seen my E.T. family, and then I'd seen Sputnik come over, so I thought that was normal. Then, after I kept to learn to walk and talk and seen angels overhead, I'm just assuming this is life. So then these orb people come in bubbles, and I was passing out because I couldn't walk and talk good, and I couldn't walk, and they would have to carry me to outside and put me in a red hammock so I could get air. The doctor decided to get fresh air was good for me, but I couldn't walk yet. I was that weak, and so they'd have to literally carry me. And it was I died. Literally died and came back. So they carried me.
Right.
But towards the last few months of getting outside, through my spring to summer, I was getting brave and wanted to walk in to use the bathroom. And I remember with the red brick house that I fainted. And these beings, I woke up with them picking me up and standing me up. And nobody else was around but the gold orb people. And then the bubbles just disappear. So to me, they're real. Orb people are real.
Hey, the orb people are picking me up. What's wrong with you? Don't see the orb people?
Yeah, don't you? But nobody would be around when they would appear. So, that's. But how I got to from there is when I decided, and I don't know if they inspired me to go or how. I don't know why I wanted to go. I just knew I had to go. I had to go. There was no stopping me. If I had to hitch a ride on a train or a bus or I don't know. But I was only third to fourth grade.
They give us experiencers like this call, just like on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Everybody had to go to that Devil's Mountain, right? And they don't know why they have to go there. And it's not clear until they get there and something happens. So your something happened, which we'll get to in a minute, was. And so anyway, what was interesting is that yours wasn't, because you were a child, you had to get some adults to take you there.
Right.
For some reason they all complied. But I thought you said that somebody worked at White Sands.
Yeah, my Uncle Rufus, Aunt Bella. Now, my grandmother never drove a car because when she fell off a running board on an old Model T or something with other kids, and I saw the picture, and then it changed her, and she was never drive a car. She was scared of cars. So her entire life she spent never driving a car. Now, grandma drove the horse. Well, they had an old mule and a cart, drove from Clark's to Monroe. I don't know if it's 16 or 30 miles. It was a long thing, but her 12 kids and the mule and all their furniture in the wagon with a mule. And so Grandma didn't drive, and then my next generation didn't drive. So my mama was the first woman to drive a car. But Uncle Rufus and Aunt Bella, Uncle Rufus did. Aunt Bella didn't drive. So there was something about that generation in my family that didn't drive. But Uncle Rufus had a car, and he was a plumber. And Aunt Bella worked at the Firestones in West Monroe in bookkeeping. But they had enough money to take me. He was a plumber, and she worked at Firestones, and my grandma worked at the paper mill. So my grandma was very obliging to me because she had to go to work when my mama was a little girl and her husband died. So he got married to somebody else but in between there, but that's a long, different story. But anyway, so the point was that nobody drove, but Uncle Rufus took me. And so they went down Route 66 over to New Mexico. And his uncle lived on a reservation, so we stayed on the reservation. I burned up and I caught Indian fire. But my other uncle, there was another uncle that worked at Los Alamos. Now I find that odd. But I've met them, so I know they did. And then later on I have more uncles that were in NASA. But go ahead.
Well, yeah, I wanted to get that point in here while we're at this part of the story, because what I'm finding by interviewing all these experiencers that had family in the government programs, you know, we know White Sands was definitely part of the secret military secret programs, is that they often involve their children, and they have these magical children that are psychic and everything. But the children are often enhanced. So what happens is, like, for example, my friend Dan Cooper, he and his brother, their sperm and egg and that whole admixture that became the fetus, which became them, it was genetically manipulated outside of the womb. And then it was inserted, they were inserted into their mothers. And then she gave birth. She bore them and grew them in her womb and gave birth. Same with his younger brother. But they were selected because they had some basic criteria that they needed to create these magical people that are psychic and end up being part of the secret programs. I'll just call them the secret programs. So that seems like you had abilities. You were like Allie. You were like Allie Clark and Taken. And so that's why they were so agreeable to take you to White Sands, because that's part of your awakening. When will she remember who she is? Well, there's TJ, 8 years old, saying, take me to White Sands. And they're going, okay, she's waking up. And on some level, they must have known you were going to be reunited with your star family.
Well, they had to take me to Carlsbad, and I had to go down into the cave. It was very important that I went to Carlsbad Caverns, and I insisted on seeing the bats fly out of the cave. And going down, it was like a 6-mile walk or some outrageous amount. I don't know, but we'll have to look it up. It's called Carlsbad Caverns. So part of the trip, it was like a 2-week trip. You know, back in the day, they'd take off 2 weeks or something, you know, 2-week vacation, go Route 66. I'm sure it took every minute of it over there. But I remember staying on the Indian reservation and getting Indian fire and having Indians pray over me in a circle. And I saw a movie once with Christopher Walken, I think. He's one of my favorite. I think he went to a teepee and there was a circle. But the Indians knew and prayed over me and knew I was an E.T. child and told me. But that's why I got Indian fire. Yeah, I was an E.T. child, star child, or sky person or something. But they sort of informed me, but I still didn't understand, except I just accepted. But, oh, yeah, you know, I'd point up and like, oh, yeah, yeah. So they knew I was coming. So I don't know how they know, but it was like, you know, the woman that came in. And there was a powerful medicine woman that healed my Indian fire. I still got a scar on my ankle, my left ankle to this day. But it was intentional. So it's like a scoop mark, actually. But it was something to do with who I was and them and being marked and them healing me so they could see me. I had to get Indian fire so I could get on the Indian reservation and be healed. So they knew I was coming. You know, it's one of those spooky things. I'm not sure how this goes together. All I know is what I experienced, and then it's just part of the sacred spiritual journey. So anyway, so they were living there. I went over to the Indian lady and went in the teepee, and they had rocks in a circle and some kind of sand scripture thing, and put me in there and did a hot sweat lodge thing, and then I got healed of Indian fire, and which is like impetigo basically, right? From hot, maybe having a fever bite. But remember, I'd been sick with a bad blood disease, hepatitis, the year before, right? They almost didn't let me go.
So you had impetigo. You had impetigo when you were young. I caught it too.
That's
This
odd.
might have been something that they needed to add, but I caught it too. It was really bad, and my mother was dealing with it. And anyway, and I was crying because it was painful. But I caught this impetigo. Yeah.
Yeah, it was worse than chicken pox.
Yeah, it was worse than my mother was.
Infection in your bloodstream from, or either, I don't know, we'll have to look it up, I forgot. But I know that it was, they said it was because I got dirt on me because, you know, I was a kid and I played outside, but they made me take a bath every night, so they were very clean people. Back in the 50s, everybody took a bath every night, rain or shine. They never let you miss. You had to be about 7. So it wasn't about the dirt, but anyway, so that was part of it. But they held me, and then I got to go to White Sands with them over to the White Sand Dunes. That's where I saw the UFO. The one that's like a 30 by 30 or 40, but Tom always said 30 by 30, so that's what I say, in or out, because they're bigger than that. But when you know, but I got to see it and go and see a man, just like on Allie Clark and Taken, which shocked the shit out of me. But yeah, the guy was standing there, and I remember going on board, and we were up on a sand dune. My Aunt Rufus, my Uncle Rufus and Aunt Bella, and my grandma was with, I call her Sisty, because my girlfriend had a sister, a bigger sister, and I didn't, so I asked her if I could call her sister. So I'd say Sisty, so that's where that came from. But anyway, they were all down at a picnic table, and they let us go run up the White Sand Dunes. So I had a 13-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy. Anyway, he was like a year or two older than me, and then she was like 12 or 13. But we were up on the sand dunes, had played all day, 2 or 3 hours, you know, noon to 4 or something. But this ship came over and they saw it. They were way on the top of a crest, like a point of sand, like you see sand dunes, but they were white. And we were up on top, and so funny, I'm trying to do it with my hands so that you can't see it. And then I remember seeing it, and then I looked at them, and they went to sleep. I was, hey, you know, don't you want to go see this, you know? And they were asleep, but somebody was talking to me like in my head, and I went down the other side of the sand dune down to where it landed. It went down on the other side from the family, you know, the relatives, and parked down on the flat part. There's a sand dune and a flat part, and then it's maybe another sand dune behind it. But it came down in the middle of them, so I was able to go in there. And I don't know how long I was in there, but I remember the guy, and people said, well, what'd you see? And I remember doing a show for Kevin Smith, but he died after I did that show with him on radio. Yeah, Kevin Smith did that. He was the one. This is another part of the story that Kevin Smith was, it comes later on, but as an adult, you know, way later when I'm writing for 2007. But he was a sheriff in Monroe, Louisiana, and told me that he had known me and watched me my whole life. And he wasn't that much older than me, but yeah, he told me that he had part of the secret police and like Interpol, and it was a global police. But he'd been watching me, and then a man that was B. Schwartz, a real rich attorney, had bought something to do with State Farm, and I remember that, and my relatives worked over there. And there's something else, I don't know how all this goes together, but the fact that he died just sort of freaked me out after telling this story on his radio show. Sort of makes you where you don't want to do radio shows, but then I guess the only way to stay aware was to make sure I did radio, because people said you better stay public, because if you don't, everybody was dying, you know, at that time.
Right.
They were, you know, wasn't very happy about 2007 coming out. So anyway, but I'm back over at the ship, and I remember it was gray, like a pewter gray type of thing, and going on, and I felt real comfortable because this is my second time, so I have a very good feeling. I don't remember any shape shifting. I tried to say it was like a school, because in my mind, I can see kids learning star systems and